start out by saying I don't have that much to say. So I'll just make a few introductory remarks and then we can open up the conversation. Um, the episodes for tonight are a little bit out of my area of expertise, but I find them very interesting. The Muna episode series was created by Mira Awad when I looked into the series. And she is a singer, songwriter, actress, a stagecoach. She does television content. And she was born in Rameh in the Galilee, and now it's in Tel Aviv. So she is a Palestinian Israeli citizen. And the story that we saw in the first two episodes in some ways mirrors some aspects of her own life. So she participated as an Israeli delegate for the 2009 Eurovision Song Contest. And there was, in fact, a petition among some Palestinians to try to get her not to participate. And she did, in fact, participate. She was accused of being sort of a voice to cover up the Israeli government and that sort of thing. So that part of the first and second episodes where we see Muna being criticized for participating as a photographer in, a contest in Paris, and there's a, petition to try to get her not to participate. Those aspects of the story actually parallel some parts of Mira Awad's own life. The series, from what I was able to find, is very interesting, sort of, Israeli and Palestinian Israeli creation as far as the sort of creative process of putting the story together. And then the director is Ori Sivan, who was born apparently in San Francisco, but he's Israeli and has a number of credits in both film and television with a lot of Israeli awards. One of his films was up for an Academy Award in foreign films in the United States, a Czech award and that sort of thing. So the two main characters, the two leading characters, Muna and her boyfriend. Muna is played by Muna Hawa, who is from Haifa. And he is played by Roy Asaf, who's from Rishon LeZion. So it's an interesting sort of collection of people putting this story together. As I said, it's a little bit outside of my expertise. So I think maybe I will just open up the discussion and, we can talk about it further if you'd like.
Going, Jack?
Sorry?
I said, are you going, Jack?
Yeah, of course. What kind of question is that? I have to tell you, okay, so it's the second time I've seen this. And I remember liking it the first time. And I can say that I loved it this time. I thought it was very powerful, very, very emotionally very powerful. I loved all the characters. They're very interesting characters. It's like I want to know them more. It's like it made me want to see the rest of the series. So that's really a credit to what they did. I never really felt bored. And I thought the issues that they raised were interesting issues. They're both politically interesting, in terms of gender issues, interesting, father-daughter stuff, very interesting, mother-son stuff on so many levels. And it was just very, very heartfelt. It's hard not to identify with any aspect of this show. And I especially loved, the reflection on her relationship with her father and his inability to grasp what she was doing and to open himself up to it. I thought that was really good. It was really, really powerful. And her desire to make peace with her father, but not at the price of giving up her own self. And the neighbor, who was beaten up by her husband, I thought that part of the story is very, very powerful. So,
Yeah. So, if I can, this is one of the few that I've seen once for the festival. So I didn't pre-screen this one, and it was a lovely surprise. I was concerned when I first opened it. If you watch a lot of Israeli series, they start to use the same characters over and over. So this was the husband and the wife from Fauda at first, and it took me a little bit to get past that and the father from the baker and the baby. But once I did, I just thought it was beautifully shot. I loved sort of the play with photography. I loved the story of the aunt and the recreating. And I agree with Jack. They did a really good job on power relations and gender power relations. That I mean, I wish I could see more, and I hadn't just seen it once. Plus, I saw it with 4,000 interruptions of colleagues writing to me to ask how to get in. Um, so I'm looking forward to watching this one again. But I completely became absorbed. She was no longer the girl who's going to blow herself up at the bar. And I just thought the visuals were pretty astonishing. I don't know, and I want to study them more. Oh, one other thing that I thought was interesting. Sorry, the politicization of the exhibition. This is, it's not just something that happened to her. So I think it was really important because I sat on a really big prize committee a few years back, and they wanted to award the prize to an Israeli scholar and a Palestinian scholar. And because one wouldn't agree to accept it with the other, because of precisely this kind of pressure, and I think a small petition, the prize actually went to neither. I won't say what prize it is, and it went to a third party. So this is something that's real, that is impacting, boycotts impacting scholarly work and artistic work on a regular basis, not just this particular maker. Yeah.
Yeah, Patricia, you mentioned the fact that the creator of the show was chosen to represent Israel in the Eurovision and the complications it made in her career. And that was back in 2009. And I think there were, you could count the number of times that Israel sent artists to the Eurovision contest with songs that talk about the conflict or songs that talk about peace, or promote peace. And I think a few years before that incident, 2009, there was a group that waved Israel and Palestinian flags on the Eurovision stage. But after Mira Awad's experience, no other song that was sent to the context ever dealt with those issues, with issues of coexistence, with Arabs or Palestinians and Israelis, with questions of peace. All the songs that were sent after were just, your plain old Eurovision songs. So it definitely kind of cut, this very important channel of communication from the Israeli art scene.
Yes, I mean, coexistence is one thing that I found that I liked the most about the series. It, it had the drawbacks of having a sort of very youthful MTV kind of aspect to it, which I'm sure is fun, and draws a wider audience than ourselves. But the coexistence aspect of it, I found pretty authentic. And it's something that, when I teach Arab-Israeli conflict or when I came back from my dissertation research and 20 years ago, I was talking about coexistence and the extent to which, this is already, people are already in, most times and places, despite all of the other, stuff, conflict going on, that there's a lot of this kind of coexistence on a day-to-day basis in, little pockets sort of everywhere around the country. So I appreciated that the series was made. It started airing, I think, in 2019 in Israel. So I thought it was really fun to sort of see that aspect, although some of it was possibly over dramatized for effect, but.
So can I ask a question? I don't know if you caught it. And again, I was interrupted 400 times during my screening. It's situated in 2014, is that correct? Yeah, so I thought that that was interesting in terms of coexistence because we filmed 2 summers ago in Moreshet. We were talking to people and taking interviews, and what they said was, and it's very close, obviously, to Arab villages, that they always lived together. And it's funny that they mentioned 2014, and they said except for at those moments, you know, where tensions rise, like 2014. So I thought it was sort of perfectly done in that background of, you know, there's going to be a war. And we caught that, you know, we have it on film. We caught that of various people saying, no, we shop together, we go to each other's villages, we come to the mall here in Moreshet. And yet they mentioned, you know, that specific war as a war.
I think those tensions are always there. I just always like to mention the coexistence aspect because I think we hear less about it. So it's not as though the conflict isn't there, and there are sort of, you know, eruptions of conflict and tension in, you know, even in communities and neighborhoods. But this little sort of pocket of coexistence was interesting to me to see sort of performed.
Do you think it's just a cultural pocket? In other words, you know, within arts, within scholarship? I mean, because it was a number of photographers working in a studio. I mean,
yeah, I think that if you get young people, I mean, these aren't teens, these are probably 20-somethings, but if you get young people together in college classes and dorms in early employment, you know, this sort of thing, I think happens, to my knowledge, fairly frequently. And then it causes all sorts of trauma. I mean, they don't get into that in these first 2 episodes, the extent to which the families are going to be traumatized by this relationship.
so who's seen the rest? Has anyone gone for that?
I've seen more, but I don't remember how many more I've seen.
Do we get to see, do we get
As
to
you know, I never remember anything anyway. So,
do we see the exhibition in the Grand Palais?
no, not that I if it was, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
It looks to me, if you go to Mira Awad's page, miraawad.co, it looks to me as though there are about 10 episodes available right on her page to watch.
Are they subtitled?
I don't think so.
I didn't check. I haven't checked.
I don't think so, Patricia.
Yeah, that could be that they're not subtitled.
I think one of the critical so the critical voices that spoke about this show in Israel is the fact that you know, it throws a lot on you starting from, you know, the first 10 minutes of the program. So already in the first episode, you know, it talks about, you know, definitely about the conflict, but we also have gender issues, religious issues. We have domestic abuse. It's all very, you know, compact and kind of spoon-fed. And I was wondering if anybody else felt that maybe the show, you know, at least in the episodes that we watched, kind of tries to tackle a bit more than, you know, a bit more than it should. If you ever, you know, if you had that sort of feeling about it.
Did you feel that?
I mean, I think it is. I think it is right to say that it sort of dumps all those, you know, all those topics on you. But I also think it does a pretty well job in terms of tackling those issues and dealing with them specifically one by one and giving them the stage that they deserve. I think also you talked about coexistence, which, you know, exists in some way, but then the show moves on from talking to about coexistence to kind of just about existence, right? Trying to see individuals living their daily lives, although engulfed by all this mess, right? But by all the things that that go around them, still trying to kind of, you know, reach their own small goals. I think that kind of comes out from the show. I think Mira Awad, who created the show, also is, you know, cares about those issues specifically. And I think she also criticizes, right, this idea that, you know, the coexistence maybe is not the problem anymore, at least not coexistence as we know it between Israelis and Arabs, because we see now, you know, those small groups inside. We'll talk about pockets, but you see that coexistence doesn't necessarily happen also, within the same group. So Muna's father, right, doesn't want her in his house. So although some sense of coexistence is there between Arabs and Israelis, right, Palestinians and Israelis, we have rifts between, internal communities in the show.
I thought that what was so powerful about it, that it went on to the sub story of father-daughter relationships, and traditional society versus how much society is going to make room for the modern world. So where women pursue their own careers, have sexual relations, outside of marriage, etc. And it felt very real to me. And it felt like this is, if I were living in a Palestinian village and I were the head of the household, I could see myself being the guy chopping down the tree. Well, I'm sorry, but I empathize with him. I understood where he was coming from. Well.
Yeah, I think there's the question of assimilation is there, because at one point, and I wasn't thinking of it in terms of always the conflict between old and new. Of course, there's the one moment where they say, well, she dresses like an Israeli, right? Which is basically to say she's assimilated. So that question of losing tradition and the relationship between more fundamental society and modern society is going to be super important. I did not feel that it takes on too much. I think what is surprising about it, because these are not surprising issues. It doesn't come off, I don't think, as artificially put there. I think what's surprising is that all of the gender issues that come up, because the relationship with her father does come up, and you see that sort of moment where her brother instructs her, whatever you do, don't oppose him if you want to get by. And I think it's just a surprise to people who don't live that every day, but none of those issues are not lived every day by a character such as that character. So absolutely not. It's just not in half of the audience's consciousness. So I didn't think it was at all surprising. I certainly think that not just living, spending time in Israel, on a semi-regular basis now, but in other places, there's nothing that isn't what you'd encounter every day, other than maybe the drunk scenes, which kind of annoyed me.
Of course, yeah. I think one of the achievements of the show is just the fact that it puts not just the Arabic language in primetime TV, which is in Israel, right? Which is still not. We had Fauda, but that's about it in terms of a show that is spoken in Arabic, almost 80% of the the running time. But it's also the positioning of an Arab Israeli-Palestinian woman at the forefront of the discourse, which is also something that doesn't happen, because Fauda, which might be the closest, one of the closest shows that gains such recognition and deals with the conflict. I mean, of course, it is about a bunch of dudes fighting each other, and here, and it's also, and it's really
that's where the surprise is.
Well, you could say this is the Palestinian shtisel.
Well, I mean, but what surprises here is that it's through Muna's eyes, and that takes on a whole number of issues that neither Shtisel nor Prisoners of War nor Fauda nor any of them, I don't think, took on. Maybe Sugim a little bit. Because
but I agree with what Roy said. I mean, language here is pivotal. The fact that it does this largely in Arabic is very radical, really very radical. It's, and you think of any society you know of where you have one dominant language, and any time that they switch to a minority language, it's quite controversial. It's quite a statement. I know that a friend of mine was touting this Mexican film that's on, with the subject were, Sephardi Jews who in fact spoke Ladino. And the fact that a lot of the narrative was in Ladino, he thought was incredible for Mexican TV to actually do something like that, because they're very real language purists there. And we often don't think of that. You know, we're so used to the idea anyway of language communication being in English, no matter what language people are supposed to be speaking. We assume that it's all going to be communicated to us in English, and we, you know, pretend that we're listening to another language. But here, you know, they're speaking a language which most of us don't know. We cannot communicate it, and to me, there's a disturbance in the use of language, or a very positive disturbance, something like that.
So, were the scenes from Syria in Prisoners of War not in Arabic?
I didn't see it.
You didn't see Prisoners of War?
No.
I think not as much as Fauda, but I think that one is also at least half, because when he's prisoner, all of those scenes in the past, they're all in Syria. Nobody else saw that one?
We're bad people.
But of course, this show, you know, Muna, what's also interesting is it gives you the perspective of an Israeli that in many of the scenes you have an Israeli, you know, Yaniv, the boyfriend, for example, sitting with the group of friends, with Muna's friends, listening to all this Arabic, but not knowing what they're talking about, right? While Muna and her friends, of course, speak the dual language. And this is what it feels like on, you know, for the average Hebrew speaker on the screen, while those characters can speak both languages. Most Jews,
they speak a third language as well, because they switch now and then into English, or bits of English. And it's also, I just had to throw that in. I mean, it's something that we're not entirely prepared for, most of us living in this country. That there are chunks of the world where people are indeed multilingual, not just bilingual, but trilingual.
Yeah, I showed my class the other week a film that's called Red Leaves, about Ethiopian immigrants in Israel, and there was I screened it through this service that you can get through your library card, right? That streams movies. And there was this prompt at the beginning of the film. There's this warning, you know, a screen that said, this film contains languages other than English, as if like, you know, be prepared that this film speaks a foreign language. But I think we also have to really appreciate, you know, the Israeli broadcasting service, Khan, which made this show possible, right? It's sort of a rehash of the Israeli broadcast service, Rashut HaShidur, that existed for, you know, since Israel was founded, and it sort of was closed and opened back again under new management a few years ago. And you can see really the importance in such, you know, in such broadcasting, because a lot of people question that. I remember Muna, the actress, in one interview said that she went online to see reactions after the first show was aired, and she was stunned to see that, you know, a lot of the comments in the comments section were exactly the same, you know, the same comments that the show is talking about. So, you know, comments is this show promotes. You know, the show is stabbing us in the back. It promotes, you know, the Palestine over Israel. It speaks Arabic. On, you know, we don't want that kind of thing on TV. So it's kind of.
I have news for you. If you look at other websites discussing recent political issues in this country, and you look what people write on them, it's amazing. Same thing.
So did anybody else, I mean, Muna's obviously from Fauda. Did anybody else recognize Bashir as automatically the husband character? Because he looks different in this. Did you recognize Bashir? Her artist friend? The other photographer? Is
another show?
He's Bashir in Fauda. He's the husband who gets shot at the wedding. Yeah. Did you notice that or no?
No. Whom are you addressing?
I was addressing other people who have seen Fauda.
Well, I haven't seen Fauda, so I can't comment.
Is that true?
No, I'm making it up.
I think you just don't remember it.
No. It's entirely possible, but in this case, I did not watch it. It's too suspenseful for me. I can't handle it.
Fauda?
I become very wussy in some of these things.
As far as the language is concerned, it was interesting to me to see the depictions of Arabic being spoken sort of in the streets in Tel Aviv, but not unusual to me to hear Arabic spoken in the streets of Israel very sort of openly, depending on where you are. So if you're in, Haifa, in Hadar, or in parts of, a lot of parts of Haifa, or some parts of Jerusalem, a lot of parts of northern Israel, there's a lot of Arabic just every day, and Hebrew and Arabic spoken together. And one of the things that I have noted over the years is in some parts of the country, you can sort of tell how easy or how tense things, relations are as far as the Arab-Israeli conflict by the extent to which you hear both languages spoken around each other very, very freely. So in places like the old city of Jerusalem, in the Jewish quarter, if you hear Arabic being spoken very freely, it means there's a lot of sort of peace and coexistence in the sort of diplomatic relations happening, or Hebrew being spoken in the Muslim quarter.
Or an older generation, of Jews who are Arabic speakers.
Right, but in the Muslim quarter of the old city, you don't hear Hebrew spoken unless it's like a good time. But in some other parts of some of the bigger cities, especially, Jerusalem or Haifa, where you've got sort of large Arab populations, you hear a lot of Arabic spoken sort of all the time. But and I couldn't tell, I sort of thought that they were depicting her sort of living in an apartment sort of in southern Tel Aviv, where you maybe hear a little bit more Arabic on a daily basis. As you get closer and closer to Yaffo, then you're going to hear more Arabic. But it is interesting to me when you hear both languages spoken in the same street corners at the same time, really freely and easily. That, to me, is an indicator that those populations feel really comfortable with each other. So you get that in places like Haifa sort of a lot, even when other parts, even when parts of Jerusalem are feeling tense, That was what I thought of when you mentioned language.
We're not mentioning the newest trend, which is always hearing French along with Arabic and along with Hebrew, and I would say in Tel Aviv now even more than English in some spots, easily more than English. One of the things I noticed though is the picking up of Arabic terms also, like using Habibi, like among Hebrew speakers are going to use Arabic terms more and more in the shows, not just Yalla, but, buddy, things like that are coming out of the Israelis' mouths, which is, I think, something newish and different. And not only among the actors in various shows, not just this one, who were Israeli, Arab Israelis, but others. So you even see some of the more Ashkenaz type actors who are in there using those kinds of terms, which I don't know if that happened before. Have you heard people use Habibi before, Roy?
Yeah, it's been around for a long time.
I think it depends what part of the country you're in. In places, in Haifa, where there's a whole lot of integration, even 30 years ago, 25 or 30 years ago, there was a lot of, the cool kids used some Arabic or swear words and that sort of thing,
Yeah, no, of course. Arabic words are used constantly for years in Israeli language. I thought it was kind of interesting to see how Hebrew words now go into the Arabic language, right? The show begins with how do you say mukavut, right? Something that is complicated. He uses the word mukavut, complicated, doesn't know how to say it in Arabic, but you have to remember that the real issue is where you could see the power balance and the differences between the two communities is that while yes, you can hear both languages spoken on the same street, but there's the Jews, the Jewish population, the Jewish Israelis, most likely 99% of the time will not understand the Arabic language. I mean, it's in the background, but nobody's supposed to speak it to you, right? If you're a Jew, if you go to a restaurant, an Arabic restaurant, the Arab Israeli waiter will talk to you in Hebrew. It's not going to work otherwise, right? So having, so this is suddenly we see that an entire, that people exist in this language, right? And communicate in this language and have meaningful conversation in this language, something that you're not used to in your daily life in Israel, although you hear it in the background. That's the thing, it's always in the background. And this show suddenly puts it, in the foreground.
I'm glad
Well,
you sorry, of that example.
Please, yeah, please.
It was a great example, that moment when he can't find the word of losing it, of losing your language. I thought that was, fabulous. And you're right, they switch, but other people have, like me, if you try to speak Hebrew in a restaurant and it's an Arab speaker, they will switch over to French as soon as they hear me try. Yeah. Sorry, Patricia.
No, I don't remember what I was going to say. Language code.
I wanted to make some comments on the parallels that I've seen between this film and the position of Palestinian Israelis and the Jewish Moroccans that I've been studying in Morocco, where they are a minority. This was during the 60s, that was had kind of a love-hate relationship with Arabs and Berbers who lived there. And in almost all times they would get along, quite well. But when there was war in the Middle East, that's when things went sour. And that's actually in 67 and 73 wars when the vast majority of immigrants left the country for France at this time, but some of them made it to Israel. But just the feeling of being a minority that sometimes is in a comfortable relationship, but sometimes you never know, things can go really bad.
And you're right. I mean, in a sense, that's one of the things that the film was showing, that if there was a murder, the killing, terrorist act, communities really split, into, with a venomous relationship to the other, and in the sense that you can't trust them, they're not really part of our community. And it's quite interesting. I mean, it's how easy things can fissure.
I remembered what I was going to say about language, Gail. The first thing is, I think for some sort of Arab youth, from what I've seen, just sort of walking around women's movement, sort of in Haifa, where there's, people from all different ethnic groups sort of involved. Using Hebrew words here and there is also a sign of education, and sort of, it's a cool thing too. So that's interesting. But also in terms of using the Palestinian Arabic dialect, I think certainly in Western films, and probably in a lot of Israeli films too, although I don't know, but certainly in Western films, when we see, in television, when we see Arabic used, it's sort of caricatured. The tones, the way it's vocalized is a sort of caricatured, sort of aggressive kind of sound. And what I did notice in these two episodes, that the way that they're speaking the Arabic language is very sort of fluid, and it's gentle, and it's, or it has different kinds of cadence and sounds that we don't always get if we hear Arabic sort of portrayed as a language. We hear the whole sort of range of, gentle, angry, and very sort of, soft-spoken, quickly spoken. The whole range of how you would sort of normally speak a language we get to hear.
Mm-hmm. The group, it's a bohemian group, and they're by and large, and then her parents are they're very gentle parents. I mean, it's the father gets a little bit wild.
Well, they're dad.
but in general, they're very gentle family, and it's a loving family, and we're not seeing them in the midst of a terrible blood currently in conflict. We're seeing them trying to deal with how to handle their daughter who's kind of, gone off on her own.
Right, and we haven't even gotten into the question. The father isn't even hearing about the married man who she's having an affair with. So his cutting down the tree hasn't even gotten to that.
No, but it's also making light of the amount of violence and control that's going on there. We've sort of skirted some of the issues that the film throws straight into your face, and doesn't want you to skirt, won't let you skirt. I mean, skirt. I've only seen 2 episodes yet, and between the brother's video and her being sort of excommunicated from the family, followed by her friend telling her, you're oblivious if you think that I can leave. I wonder to what degree, I mean, I'm trying to think of other series. I haven't seen those issues addressed explicitly among or portrayed among Israeli women, and I'm wondering if it's an easy way to do so. In this case, I don't know, by othering it. But though that distinction between, yes, the modern, more assimilated world where women have rights and make decisions is clearly, something they're grappling with.
Orthodox, right? Aired on Netflix might be a interesting example.
Yeah, but does he? So one of them gets beat up in Stiesel, one of the wives. I don't remember her.
Yes, that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. She's
the
the
friend,
same one who's
he
in
shaves her-
the Unorthodox.
right. One of them, he shaves her head and starts to beat her. Another series, not just Unorthodox, and now I can't remember which one it is. I know what it is. No, is it the one with the Russian Jews? Her friend.
I don't think anyone gets their head shaved in the Russian.
No. So which one is it? It's the friend of. Maybe it's in Stiesel. In Stiesel is one of the friends goes off to New York, gets married.
It's unorthodox.
That is the same as okay, it's unorthodox. So have you seen others that do this? I mean, it's one example, and even there, Roy, they're putting it within the ultra orthodox community, and not in every community. And that's kind of one of the things that I think is going to come out more and more in the show. It probably will not be restrictive, but I think it makes it easy to do so, by making it.
You mean the violence towards women?
Yeah. Or at least the power relations. Yes, the restrictions. So I wondered what.
There was a moment in the show, in this last episode, where the boyfriend is confronting his ex-wife.
Yes.
And it had a violent moment, but never crossed over into actual physical violence. Right. But it was a body language, a body language of violence. So that was very interesting. It's the way it stopped it there.
No, I think if this is what we've seen so far, I think it's going to be really surprising throughout how upfront it is going to be. And that may be why it seems like a lot to people who don't live it.
Please.
Your microphone is on.
Your mic is muted.
Mute. Okay. I have a question. I would like to see more of the series. Would somebody please spell what I have to go to on the web to see the rest of the series?
You can go to miraawad.co, but I don't think they're going to be subtitled. Let me check.
Tricia, if you could type that into
the chat box.
Oh, yeah, let me do that.
So people see it.
It has subtitles in Hebrew and in Arabic.
Okay.
In both languages. I mean, and that is something that you do have in a lot of Israeli television and film now that's on TV is subtitles in Hebrew and in Arabic, or in English and
and Russian too, no?
Right, but you get a lot of subtitles in Arabic so that people. It's a very multilingual society. I think you're right about that, Jack. I mean, extraordinarily multilingual.
Can you tell me how these 2 episodes were chosen if there are more to see?
Well, I choose things, so
Okay.
so I can tell you. But in these cases, we're often really restricted by 2 things. One is they charge quite a bit of money per episode. So, it becomes as expensive as showing a feature film. And 2, there's a limited amount that they'll market internationally. So the whole series is not available. So there may have been 3 episodes available. I don't remember. I've seen more, but we can't really show. Maximum we could show is 3. I guess I would have shown one more episode if it were available, or if I was thinking straight. But on the other hand, the problem is no matter how many you show, it's
Not enough.
you're always stopping in the middle of something. You want to know what's going to happen.
Right.
Anyway, I really liked some of the episodes we have shown. Did we show what was it called? Touch Away.
We
No,
didn't.
we never showed it. No. It's a very nice series. I really liked it. It's not the best of the series, but I still liked it a lot. And I think sorry?
It had great characters.
Great characters. I think there were only 10 episodes available. So it was on my mind, but we never got around to showing it. And there too, we could end up showing a couple of episodes. It's quite expensive. And then everyone would be dissatisfied because you all want to know what happens. It's a love story and almost love story. And, so it gets cut off in the middle. So
I think that
So
one.
is there like a budget that you have a budget for these films?
yeah, we try to keep them, within the range of no more than $1,000 or $1,200 per film. It's a lot of money compared to what most people are paying.
Whoa. Wow.
So if we can get them in less, but a lot of these things are going to, I don't remember, Virginia will know the prices. She handles that. I would think this particular distributor is rather expensive.
Sounds like we need sponsors for these.
Sorry?
It sounds like sponsors are needed.
Sponsors are needed.
Oh,
So, it's like our goal is to get the series, the film festival endowed, so that it costs us about $20,000 a year. And, for, if you include everything, usually we have to use the cinema. I'm not sure how much this is costing as opposed to renting the cinema, but the publicity and the rental of the films and so on. And that it's, basically we need about a $500,000 endowment. That's what we're hoping to get eventually.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Pardon me for doing a little promo for what we're looking for, but it's like what I said about whether or not Golden Ear would know what to do if she walked into a synagogue, and I insisted she did know what she would do. She would start fundraising. That's sort of in the blood for me as well.
I opened the door, so no problem.
That's okay.
I put the link to Mira Awad's page that has some of the Muna episodes
Thank you, Patricia.
on the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
But they do have subtitles, but again, they're only in Hebrew and Arabic.
Why not Russian?
Well, it depends how fast you read.
Jack, do you know whether this is being negotiated to be picked up for a streaming service?
A lot of the stuff is. I mean, you can almost rest assured that it will be, but I never know where or when. And, it's just been very successful in promoting its products internationally. So it's also why I'm comfortable only showing a couple of episodes, figuring that sooner or later, you'll be able to get the rest of the series. Well, like, for example, Srogim, we were able to buy. You could buy it. So I don't know, there's 3 seasons of it, I think. And so we have in our collection the entire 3, I think there's 3 seasons, whatever. So we have the entire thing. So, but then, much to my chagrin, after we bought it, it's available online. So, there was ultimately was no reason to buy. Well, I'm sort of being facetious. It's always good to have it. You can have more control of what you show, and because we use this for classes as well. What else? Stiesel is available.
Stiesel is available. A Touch Away is now available. The whole
A Touch Away is available online. It's a nice series. You like romance, sweet romance. Which I love. That I do recommend A Touch Away. And that was picked up, by the way, by an American, by HBO or one of the others, but they never ended up making the series. I'm not sure how they would, because it's a romance between a Russian new immigrant Russian family and an Orthodox Israeli family. It's a little bit improbable, but it's got a lot of sweet moments in it.
Yeah.
What year was that?
It's a little older. It must be at least 10 years old. Roy would know. Roy?
Thanks, Jack.
Well, he probably would. Is he still around?
It was around the time of Sir Green, wasn't it?
I think it's older.
We had students, they would have looked it up by now and told us. If we had students here, they would have looked it up by now and told us.
If there were kids.
Yeah, if there were students.
Yeah. As I said, if God didn't want us to know that information, he or she would not have invented Google. So it's there. You should be able to find out. And I'm never asked me any questions about facts.
But the other ones, there's also already online. There's Prisoners of War. There's Hostage in both English and French, American and French remakes, and the original, Hebrew. There's The Baker and the Beauty, which is no.
Nope.
Does anybody else watch that one? You must know it, Roy.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Roy, you're in trouble.
They made it terrible. They tried to make an American version of it. It's like they made the American version of Hostages and Homeland based on Prisoners of War.
You forgot the most important one. They made an American version of
Prisoners of War.
In Treatment.
Oh, yeah.
Bit too poor. Yeah. So it was interesting how they handled that. I thought I watched both the American and the Israeli. Did anyone else see In Treatment? No? Okay. It was the first big blockbuster, that really crossed over into American TV.
Yeah. That was Moshe Dayan's son. It was the
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Dayan, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The comments on it were very interesting. They said, the problem with it, it's like real therapy because it's very boring, but it's not real enough, because if it were real enough, it would be impossible to watch it. It'd be so boring. So,
yeah. And they don't charge you as much.
Sorry?
And you don't have to pay as much as you would.
Right. Well, did people like the series that you saw?
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone dislike it?
Watch it.
I think this would be difficult to use for classes because of the nudity.
Yeah.
But that's also an interesting aspect. It wasn't something that's sort of part of what I was referring to as the MTV kind of aspect of the show. But it's not something that I like. But it is interesting to have that be part of Israeli television with Palestinian actresses and actors involved. So that's interesting, sort of for Palestinian society, maybe, as well as sort of an integrated cast doing this.
But Patricia, the nudity was, he was the only character I can think of who was fully nude in the show. So his tush was shown, but the front part he covered up with a hat.
Right, but we at the end of episode 2, we have previews for the next episode where, you know, I mean, it's not huge nudity, but it's noticeable. I think if we're talking about gendered issues where women are sort of being subject to, you know, marital violence or dad chopping down the tree because he's mad she has an apartment in Tel Aviv, sort of the kind of nudity that we've seen so far and the kind of nudity that's sort of promised in the previews would seem to me something that's interesting and sort of noteworthy as something to have on, you know, regular 8 p.m. Israeli television with a Palestinian actress sort of from the side. It's an interesting aspect of it, but I also think it would make it hard to use it in class, or I would not feel comfortable using it in class.
Nowadays, you have to be careful whatever you do.
I wouldn't bet an eye.
Sorry?
I wouldn't bet an eye.
I wouldn't bet an eye either, but then I'd have my students complain.
My students, right, exactly.
I've yet to,
if I can show them bodies being bulldozed that are naked, I can certainly show them, you know.
there will be people complaining, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, Patricia, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an interesting show. I enjoyed the opportunity to watch it and look into it. I don't feel like I have that much to
did you watch Breaking Bread?
I didn't.
You should see it.
This was the first one I've seen in the series. There are several others that I'm signed up to see.
Okay, well, Breaking Bread would be interesting for you, considering where you work. I mean, you know, it's a food festival in Haifa, so it's a sweet film.
Right.
What's on for tomorrow? Anybody know?
Tomorrow night is Incitement, which is a dramatization of the events leading up to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. And everybody knows the ending of that, but the way that they approach the story in terms of the family background and motivations for where this young man was coming from is a really interesting film. Ken Wald will be our discussant, and that will be at 9:15, I think, tomorrow night. It's a longer film. It's over 2 hours long.
Discussion will be 9:15. Yeah. Unfortunately, it is a very good film. It's one of those films I was hoping when I first sat down to watch it that I could turn it off soon enough, and yet it's very compelling. It's really, really very well done. So.
And coming up over the weekend on Saturday night, we have my Polish honeymoon, which Gail is going to debrief for us. That'll be at 8:00. Since it gets dark earlier, Shabbat will be over by 6:30. And so that's our basic start time is right after Shabbat. And then people can be wrapped up in an hour and a half and be on a call at 8. So we won't have such a late night on Saturday night. And then on Sunday afternoon, we've got The Rabbi Goes West in the afternoon, hosted with Rachel Gordon. And in the evening, we've got My War Hero Brother and Jack.
My uncle's a war hero.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, not My War Hero Brother. My War Hero Brother, I think, is another documentary. My bad. My War Hero Uncle. That we've been talking about for a couple of years, and we finally got it. And Jack is going to talk about that one at 8:00 also. So
let me just say a few words that the My Polish Honeymoon, it's really a nice film. It's really we try and get some feature films into the festival, and they're hard to find ones that are good and worthwhile and entertaining. And this is one of the few ones that we have. But I do recommend it. It's a nice film. Also, you would think that The Rabbi Goes West is kind of a silly film, sort of a little bit of a, comedy. It's not a comedy at all. It's very insightful look at transformations of the Jewish communities with the emergence of Chabad is becoming almost normative Judaism, especially more fragile communities. It's a good documentary. It's very, very compelling. So I really recommend it. And then my war hero uncle, or my uncle the war hero, I think it's a wonderful film. I was blown away by it the first time I saw it. I thought it was had a wonderful premise, had a beautiful relationship between the grandson and the grandmother, and that sort of carries much of the film. And then the little story that gets revealed in the course of the film, which is sort of what most people start to figure out. Of course, I don't. But it's a very good story, and you also get some historic views of a kibbutz, footage of a kibbutz from the 60s, which I always find intriguing. But the story is a very good story. It's an excellent documentary. So that's where we are.
There we go.
Mhm.
So thank you all for sticking with us this evening, and we'll see you on our next film. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice to see you, and nice to see
Good
you,
night.
Alice. If you can hear me, Alice.
Who's there?
It wasn't Alice. Your mic's off.
Alice is here.
She's here, but her mic
Oh.
is off.
Here, but I couldn't see the film because
Here the whole time.
that
Oh,
film
it's
wasn't
blocked. It's
wasn't-
blocked.
It was blocked in BC. That's why I couldn't get it, Gail. So
Yeah.
sorry to have interrupted you.
Oh, but it's nice to see you, and it's
By
nice
the way, if that happens again, you can cheat. Do what my kids do. You can have someone hold up an iPhone while the film is being shown, so you can see it. Like if you want to see the film, you'd be able to do it that way.
Someone hold up an iPhone in Gainesville?
Yeah, while
Okay.
they're watching the film, so they hold up an iPhone. They speak to you on the however you do it, on
Okay.
whatever.
Can I
And
just
so-
say
the recording.
that's not necessary. The only movies that were geo-blocked were Golda, Breaking Bread, and Muna tonight. All the other movies are available
I know, but
anywhere
that's
in
what
the
she
United
wanted.
States.
Oh, so we're
Well,
finished.
no, I understand that, but in
Yeah.
terms of going forward, there's no need to pirate any of the movies. You
So
can
I'm
I
telling you how
actually
to
got
pirate
the days
film
mixed up
in the
and thought that
future.
today we were doing so. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. Alice, follow up with me offline, and I maybe can help you out with screening things you couldn't see. So
You're recording.
Okay.
leave it at that.
I got enough films coming forward. It's all right.
All right.
No, but this
Sounds good.
This was really worthwhile. It's really you should see it. It's like
Life is full of things that are worthwhile.
and a lot of
Can't do
things that
any
are
of
not.
them right now. So